so I won't read it as it's quite long and we want to give him plenty of time. Under his tenure, our mayor has worked hard to build Louisville and the region into a great American city. His bold leadership has been recognized many times. Governing Magazine named Mayor Fischer Public Official of the Year in 2013. Later, a 2016 Politico survey named him as the most innovative mayor in America. And in 2017, Politico named Mayor Fischer among its list of the nation's most interesting mayors. And his peers elected him to serve as president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, a term that began July 1 of 2020. Mayor Fischer is determined to work with America's mayors as the nation's cities rebuild their economies in the wake of COVID-19 and renewed calls for racial justice built on equity and opportunity. Mayor Fischer is live with us on this call this afternoon, but due to technology concerns, we want to make sure his presentation comes across clearly. So he's with us during this presentation, and we ask that everyone, if you would turn off your video so we make sure we have good connectivity, and mute yourselves. And then following, hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A with the mayor. So please join me in welcoming to the podium our great Mayor Fischer. They're working on the sounds, everyone knows, so just bear with us, please. Thank you.
Thanks to the Louisville Rotary Club for giving me this opportunity every year to report on the state of our city. I wish we could be together, as we were last year at the beautiful new Y on West Broadway, where we focused on Louisville children and how we must prepare for their future, even though we can't fully predict what the future will be. In last year's speech, I said, quote, "We don't know what major events will impact the lives of today's Louisville kids." Well, here we are, 1 year later, and we know our children will carry with them vivid and scarring memories of 2020 and a still uncertain impact of COVID-19, of stay-at-home orders and NTI, of racial justice protests in the name of Breonna Taylor, and of rioters storming the U.S. Capitol in a violent assault on the democratic process. Some have watched parents struggle through job loss and financial ruin, and others lost family members to COVID-19 or to gun violence, which tragically reached an all-time high. They'll remember how the adults in their lives reacted to these events, and there's no shame in our admitting that we were shaken at times and heartbroken, infuriated, worried, and exhausted. I know that I've felt that all last year, and so has every mayor, every leader, every parent, and every friend that I've talked to. These are natural human reactions to what we've experienced, and the pain has not been spread equally. As so often happens, people of color, immigrants, and people at the lowest end of the income spectrum have been hardest hit. But we've all been tested in ways we never expected. And while sometimes those tests found us wanting, we persevere. We keep moving, we keep learning, we keep working to heal our city and move forward. The best thing we can do and the most important choice we can make right now is to commit ourselves to finding our unique opportunities amidst the challenges, to believing in ourselves, in each other, and the possibilities of 2021 and beyond, and to use the lessons we have learned to attack and overcome the challenges that confront us, eliminating COVID-19, rebuilding our economy, advancing our goals of racial equity and justice, and the related challenges of reimagining public safety and reducing gun violence. Let's take those one at a time. First, COVID-19. Our goal is that next year's State of the City will be delivered in person over a beautiful shared Rotary lunch, and school buses will be taking children to in-person classes. Visitors will be filling our downtown hotels, restaurants, museums, and convention center. You'll be going back to your favorite restaurant, seeing concerts and plays and ball games with your friends and family without mask and without worry. Thanks to the work of scientists, researchers, and public health staffers, that prospect is now a possibility if we can vaccinate enough of our population. Our public health team is working with our hospital systems, pharmacies, and other community partners, along with state and federal agencies, to get as many people vaccinated as quickly as possible and to make sure the distribution is efficient and equitable. Last week, we opened our first drive-through vaccination site at Broadbent Arena. This Louisville Metro government effort, aided by outstanding partners like the Kentucky Nurses Association and a great group of volunteers, is an initiative we can all be extremely proud of. Our initial focus there is frontline healthcare workers, and while we had initially projected vaccinating 1,000 people in the first week, things went so well we vaccinated twice that many last week, and this week we'll do twice more again with 4,000 vaccinations. The ability to distribute this life-saving vaccine is a hope-filled and bright spot, but we have to be aware that we're still fighting a grim battle against COVID-19. We just passed 700 COVID deaths in our city. Unfortunately, we're probably going to reach 800 in the not too distant future. So for now, we have to keep wearing masks and social distancing and doing what we can individually and collectively to keep more lives from being needlessly lost. Nobody understands that better than our healthcare heroes. One of the most gratifying moments of this crisis has been seeing healthcare professionals get their shots. They've risked their lives and health, sacrificed themselves and their families to serve their patients, too many of whom never went home. Our healthcare heroes have earned our respect 1,000,000 times over. So have people like Louisville firefighter Michael Branch, who contracted the virus last March, recovered, and went back to work. Since then, he's donated plasma to help other COVID-19 patients recover. He said, quote, "Because we're living in history right now, I want to look back and say I did my part to contribute." And you have, firefighter Branch. Thank you. Our heroes include JCPS school nurses. They started receiving the vaccine last week and will be vaccinating teachers soon, doing all we can to get our children back to the classroom for in-person learning as quickly as possible. President-elect Biden has vowed to dramatically increase the speed of vaccinations nationwide with a target of 100 million doses in his first 100 days, so we can recover from this virus more quickly. That would equate to about 230,000 Louisvillians, a goal that we stand ready to achieve and surpass. So please, roll up your sleeves, get your shot on when this life-saving vaccine is available to you. Taking the vaccine will help keep you safe, and it's the pathway forward for your family, our community, and our economy. In the meantime, the pandemic is still surging, so again, keep wearing a mask, keep your distance, and limit trips out and interactions with other people. And I know that's hard. This is Penny, my 14-month-old granddaughter. I shared her photo with you last year. She lives out of state, so I haven't been able to hug and kiss on her for a year now. So you can imagine how much I want a family reunion long delayed by this dastardly virus. I know many of you feel the same way about your families. So that day's coming for us all. Let's do what it takes to get us all there. That community spirit is what we need to take on these challenges, including rebuilding a more equitable economy. The pandemic's toll includes jobs and businesses lost and the anxiety of lost income and lost opportunities, or choosing between working or keeping yourself or a vulnerable family member safe. So the vaccine is great news for our economic, physical, and mental health. There's also good news for our city's economic core business clusters. Manufacturing is still strong. I've spoken with the leaders at Ford and GE Appliances. GE has just come off 2 very large appliance line expansions this past year, and both companies are optimistic about this year and the future. Logistics and e-commerce prospects are looking really good too. UPS Worldport is one of the major hubs for vaccine distribution. Some companies in our tech sector have thrived in this challenging year, and many others in our business services cluster have adapted to remote working. Louisville's also home to more health and aging innovation company headquarters than anywhere in America, and this sector is poised for even more growth. I'm excited to welcome Passport Health Plan by Molina Healthcare. They've hired almost 500 local employees and will be hiring even more. Across the country, tourism and hospitality have been hit especially hard. Locally, we have about 65,000 hospitality workers, about 2/3 of whom have been laid off or furloughed. Metro government has been working to help our incredible restaurants by suspending fees, expanding outdoor seating, launching grant and loan funds to assist restaurants and other small businesses. Our Small Business COVID-19 Relief Grant Program started in July and has distributed over $27 million. More funding from the new federal relief package will help, but the needs of our small businesses are still really great, so we all must do what we can to support them. And our tourism and our hospitality and food and beverage sectors, they will recover. Bourbon has been thriving, which is good news for bourbon tourism or bourbonism, which is critical to those sectors. And we know that once people are comfortable traveling again, we're going to be really well positioned to rebound because we're a day's drive from 2/3 of the U.S. population. Before the pandemic, we were attracting 16 million visitors a year. Returning to that level will take time, but it will happen, and it will be great for our economy and particularly our downtown. And revitalizing our downtown is a critical focus for my team and our community partners. We understand that some form of telework is most likely here to stay. Office and business needs will change, but I believe in our downtown and its assets, our hotels, restaurants, cultural institutions, and venues. We will innovate and take advantage of the opportunities that come with our challenges. And we are working with our business and tourism partners to revitalize downtown. LMPD visibility has increased, and Metro government is investing an additional $1 million in our Clean Collaborative Plan. Also, we're working with the Coalition for the Homeless and community partners so that the heart of our city can continue to drive economic growth for years to come. We all know that a vibrant, healthy downtown is essential for any thriving city. And our downtown was thriving and experiencing an amazing renaissance prior to the pandemic. That's why we're putting together a downtown revitalization team to identify and prioritize actions to speed the recovery of downtown once we're out of this pandemic. In some cases, we're developing new strategies, and others we're building on and adapting existing plans. This will be a partnership of community stakeholders, including businesses, institutions, arts, culture, and media organizations. We want to work together to prepare for the day when COVID is behind us and downtown is ready to welcome workers, residents, and visitors. To do that, we have to identify the steps needed to maximize the potential of our built environment: office, residential, restaurant, hospitality, and retail spaces, along with clean, green, and safe public spaces for people to gather and enjoy. There's also good news for our economy in the most recent federal COVID relief package, which will provide direct assistance to individuals and renters, unemployment insurance, vaccine distribution, and more. It's important to note that the package does not include direct funding for state and local governments to address the budget shortfalls resulting from the economic downturn. A lot of American cities will be in dire straits and laying off key personnel, including first responders and public health staff. Now, that being said, President-elect Biden has said that he's committed to providing more assistance to state and local governments, knowing how critical that it is to keep important city services going for our residents during this pandemic crisis. My team and I are in the early stages of planning the budget that I'll present to Metro Council in April. Partly because of earlier federal relief from the CARES Act, we don't anticipate drastic reductions or layoffs. But the cuts we've had to make in Metro government 2 years ago, when we eliminated several hundred positions, combined with the reduced revenue forecast as a result of COVID-19, will have an impact. Our workforce is now at about 5,100 employees, compared to about 5,600 just 2 years ago, and 6,100 at merger. We have an outstanding team of public service professionals at Metro government, and I thank them and my partners on the Metro Council for their work, innovation, sacrifice, and partnership in an incredibly challenging time. But the reality is that while we have been able to balance our budget, a smaller workforce impacts our ability to render services to the people of our city at a time when the needs are great. And if you need any evidence of how great the need is, let's talk about a fundamental need, like food. Look at Dare to Care, a great city partner and one of the top food bank operations in the country. They've seen a 20% increase in requests for help since the pandemic began. They're now serving more than 200,000 people in the Louisville area. Think about those folks, many for the first time, who've had to say to a stranger, I don't have enough food to feed my children. In a city and country as wealthy as ours, no one should go hungry. That's why Metro government has long supported Dare to Care and other nonprofits through external agency funds and through programs like March for Meals. March for Meals distributed over 83,000 frozen meals to seniors during the early days of the pandemic. We're also investing millions in eviction prevention. As of December 31st, our eviction prevention efforts have helped people in more than 13,000 Louisville households stay in their homes. We're proud of that, but again, the need is much greater. That's because we're dealing with a serious problem in our local and national economy where we see an uneven, so-called K-shaped recovery, where high-income earners are mostly unaffected and low-income earners are struggling just to survive. And that is fundamentally unsustainable. Listen to this quote attributed to one of my heroes, Louisvillian and U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. Quote, we must make our choice. We may have democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we cannot have both. We cannot price people out of the American dream and expect them to flourish. Instead, we must work harder to create more opportunities and greater access to resources for everyone. And we must start early through partnerships like JCPS's Academies of Louisville, which helps students choose a career path during high school, or SummerWorks, our nationally recognized summer jobs program for young people, or Code Louisville, which has now placed more than 500 graduates in tech careers. We're scaling Tech Louisville, which provides training in many West Louisville neighborhoods, and the Future of Work initiative, our partnership with Microsoft that's working to grow and diversify our tech workforce. I'm really proud of these programs. They have changed lives and careers, and in many cases provided a path from poverty to a middle-class income and beyond. And it's really critical that we grow, develop, and diversify our tech workforce as well as our overall workforce, because we have to address another key challenge going forward, and that's the need to advance the cause of racial equity and racial justice in our city. When we talk about racial equity, we mean that because of both historic and contemporary 21st century institutionalized racism. Black people have far fewer opportunities, face more discrimination, and far too often live shorter, harder lives than they should in a country with the abundant wealth of America. That's the painful reality of racism in America, and that's the pain that helped fuel the racial justice protests in our streets in 2020, just like it fueled the protests 50 years ago, and that will fuel more protests in the future unless we change course. In the past 10 years, Louisville Metro government has made record investments to further the cause of racial equity, and it has not been nearly enough. We have to do more. And that's why I'm committed to making racial equity a higher priority than ever before. To do that, we must first acknowledge that we have not done enough to eradicate racism from our institutions, our policies, and practices. While there has been progress, so much remains undone. These are challenges that exist all over the country, but it's our job to take care of our challenges in our hometown. For example, the black poverty rate in Louisville is nearly 3 times the white poverty rate. Blacks make up 22.4% of our population, but own only 2.4% of our businesses. The percentage of blacks who own their homes is half the percentage of whites. And look at public health in West Louisville. Average life expectancy is approximately 67 years, compared to the eastern half of Jefferson County, which is more than 70% white, where life expectancy is 82 years, a 15-year difference. That's horrifying and completely unacceptable, as is the fact that this is by no means just a Louisville situation. Those stats are mirrored in cities all across America. These and countless other statistics and real-life experiences tell us that our systems are so broken they must be reformed and replaced. And while we will do everything we can at the local level, the reality is that these systems will only fundamentally change with resource shifts at the state and national level. That's why who we elect matters. That's why voting and values matter, particularly the values of compassion and equity and justice. We need to rethink and reform how government, businesses, education, healthcare, and other institutions operate so everyone has a fair shot at the American dream. And while that's more than we can accomplish locally by ourselves, we can make progress. We can create partnerships and opportunities to benefit all. That's the goal of our Build Back Better Together initiative, which we launched to help us recover from the COVID-19 economic downturn in a way that creates a more equitable and dynamic economy, an effort we launched even before the protests for racial justice. Last month, I signed an executive order declaring racism a public health crisis. And as part of that order, I released a plan for advancing racial equity in 7 key areas: public safety, children and families, black employment, black wealth, housing and neighborhood investment, health, and voting. This plan includes strategies to build black wealth by increasing and supporting black-owned businesses through financing, technical assistance, and business networking, and increasing black home ownership through more down payment assistance, financing, and other supports. Invest in affordable housing and eviction prevention and restoring disinvested neighborhoods through home ownership programs and anti-displacement initiatives. We will soon announce a loan loss guarantee pool of $1 million that's designed to drive more of our financial institutions to issue loans to homeowners and businesses in West Louisville. And looking ahead to March, we will welcome home both new and longtime residents to the brand new Beecher Terrace. We'll start with the community living building, which will house folks who are at least 55 years young, and throughout the year we'll welcome more residents to the surrounding mixed-income apartments and townhomes in the historic Russell neighborhood. And as always, we'll give first priority to people who lived in Beecher Terrace before the revitalization, because they're the people this project is designed to benefit the most. And we're working with Vision Russell and other community partners to further build the neighborhood while preventing displacement. We're also supporting children and families through Evolv 502 by working to provide every child with wraparound personal supports and the opportunity for a tuition-free college degree or specialized training in fields with shortages of skilled workers. And you'll notice that while some of our equity efforts are specifically targeted to the black community, others are focused more broadly on fighting poverty, which is a trap that holds back children, families, and communities of all races in our city as a whole. These efforts help all of us by improving our tax base and increasing workforce skills and the spending power of our residents. They make our city healthier, create more opportunities and dignity in work, produce safer neighborhoods, and send a message that our city is dedicated to compassion, opportunity, equity, and justice for all. Some of these larger systemic issues require action at the state and federal level to address, like universal child care, universal pre-K, and a living wage. Those are critical to making the transformation we need, and we will fight for them and other needed reforms. This session, Metro government is pursuing a state legislative agenda that includes changes to state law that will promote our equity initiatives, including bail reform and voting rights, and providing greater transparency and accountability in police-involved disciplinary matters. One of the messages that resonated from the protest of last year was that achieving racial equity and justice demands reimagining public safety. And when we talk about public safety in Louisville, we have to acknowledge 2 fundamental facts. 1, our police officers are doing incredibly challenging, dangerous, and essential work to serve and protect the people of our city. And 2, our police department, like other public and private institutions in our city and across America, must evolve in terms of its culture, its structure, recruiting, training, and practices in order to strengthen police community legitimacy, address the need for racial justice, and help us create a safer city. Over the past several months, we've made changes to bring more transparency and accountability to our police force. That includes signing Breonna's Law, which bans no-knock warrants and expands requirements for use of body cameras, implementing landmark reforms such as incentivizing officers to live in some of our more challenged neighborhoods, changing use of force policies, and exploring crisis intervention models that do not always require a police response. We've established our Civilian Review Board and Office of Inspector General, and we've named Erica Shields as our permanent Chief of Police after a national search. Chief Shields has been a change agent throughout her 25-year career, where she rose from the rank of beat officer to the chief of the Atlanta Police Department. She also understands strategy, tactics, and the need to produce results in police work, which she did as chief, including a 3-year decline in felonies. Tragedy struck her city last year with the killing of Rayshard Brooks by an Atlanta police officer, a tragedy all too familiar to us in Louisville and unfortunately too many cities across America. And when it became clear that a big change was needed to start the healing process in the city she loved, she put her city before herself and stepped down. One of the things about Erica Shields that impressed me was that she said ours was the only chief position in America that she was interested in, because she sees an opportunity to recreate policing and for LMPD to be the best police department in the country. And it was clear that she has the passion for police work, along with the skills and experience to achieve the reform we need. That's why she was the unanimous choice of our 8-person diverse interview panel. Chief Shields will be sworn in on January 19th, and her top 2 priorities will be to reduce gun violence and build police community trust. She will implement feedback from Hillard Heinz, which is completing the top-to-bottom review of LMPD that I called for to find areas where we need to improve, and models from around the country to help guide us. That work includes doing more to ensure that implicit bias training is more thoroughly understood and implemented throughout the police force in all of Metro government. And recruiting and retaining more women and people of color to serve as police officers is important, and we need to support the good officers we have now by paying them competitive salaries so we don't train and then lose them to higher paying law enforcement agencies. And we're advocating for new state laws, policies, and state funding streams to promote mental wellness amongst officers, and by pushing to criminalize the practice of doxing, or releasing home addresses and other private information of public officials. Yes, we must hold our police officers to a high standard, but we must also give them the support needed to help us take on community challenges like an unacceptable level of gun violence. We must all be appalled by our level of gun violence. 173 homicides in a single year in 2020, and far too many so far this year, and commit to doing everything we can to reverse this heartbreaking and infuriating loss of human life and human potential. There is no singular cause for these tragedies, but I appreciate the changes made by Chief Yvette Gentry to address violent crime, and I want to thank her for her service to our city and for taking on the incredibly difficult challenge of leading our police department over these last few months. As we look ahead, one thing we know by now is that we can't arrest our way out of this challenge, and that's why we're also addressing violent crime by launching the Group Violence Intervention, or GVI, initiative. GVI is a community-driven effort that focuses on the groups at highest risk for being either victims or perpetrators of violence. It's a partnership between community members, social service agencies, and law enforcement who work to identify those at risk and intervene by providing information so they understand where continued violence will lead them and often their loved ones. And just as importantly, we will help them fully understand the services and programs that are available to them so they know they have the opportunity to change the course of their lives. They have the ability and resources to rewrite their own stories into stories of victory. GVI has proven successful in helping other cities reduce violent crime, and I'm hopeful in its potential to complement all of our efforts to reduce crime and gun violence and make our city safer. The bottom line in all of this is that every person deserves to be safe and healthy in their homes, their streets, their communities, their businesses, just as they deserve equal access to opportunity. That's the vision that my team and I have been working to create for these last 10 years, and that we will be working even harder to bring to life every day for the 2 years remaining in my term as your mayor. We will take the next crucial steps now, and we have to take them together, because the challenges that we're facing are too big for government to solve on its own. They're too big for the private sector to solve, and too big to solve through the action of individuals or schools or nonprofits or houses of worship. But when you put all of those together, transformation is possible. Anything is possible. We've seen it over the past year. Signs of the deep reserves of compassion, innovation, and energy among the people of Louisville to make our hometown healthier, safer, more equitable, and more unified. In the fight against COVID-19, we have incredible allies, particularly in our faith community, including organizations like the Muslim Americans for Compassion, which provided meals to frontline workers, among other contributions led by Rotarian Dr. Muhammad Baber. Metro government also formed partnerships with houses of worship like St. Stephen Church, which tended to its congregation through virtual services and served as a host for COVID-19 testing. Community leaders created a path forward, expanding our city's racial equity work. GLI has established the Business Council to end racism, and companies like Humana, Norton Healthcare, Brown-Forman, Thornton's, and Yum Brands have all made multi-million-dollar commitments to fighting systemic racism in Louisville. Combine their commitments with those from foundation partners like the James Graham Brown Foundation, the Geens Foundation, CENS Foundation, Blue Meridian Partners, McKinsey Scott, and others, and we've seen about $150 million of philanthropic commitment in the past year. This illustrates a growing recognition that talent and ability are spread evenly throughout our city, but opportunity and access are not. It's also a recognition that Louisville is a good place for a great return on philanthropic investment. Here's another example. Soon we'll see the completion of Louisville Urban League's $52 million Norton Sports Health and Athletics and Learning Complex in the Russell neighborhood. Metro government invested the first $10 million in this project, and it's incredibly exciting to anticipate its opening. I'm confident that this facility will help develop future scholars and Olympians who will make our city and our country proud. And it will help us build on the roughly $1 billion of economic investments we're seeing in West Louisville, a down payment on the overall need. And look at what those business and philanthropic commitments are making possible. I mentioned Evolv 502 earlier. In 2020, the Evolv 502 scholarship was funded and launched. This will give every eligible Jefferson County Public Schools graduate in the 2021 to 24 classes the opportunity to pursue tuition-free an associate's degree, career credential, or 60 hours of credit to transfer to a four-year university. Think about that. If you're a JCPS high school student, higher education is now available to you cost-free. This is a game changer for our young people in our city. These are just a few examples of the energy I'm seeing in organizations throughout our city, including in the Rotary Club of Louisville, which already has an outstanding history of promoting opportunity through programs like the Rotary Promise Scholarship, which opens the doors to college for students from 4 local high schools. And now, Rotary is building on that work. Thank you for sharing with me and our community your Community Impact Committee's agenda for Louisville's future, which acknowledges that, quote, business leaders need to support the role of the Black community, unquote. Thank you for your commitment to recruit more Black members. Thank you for providing grants to support the Family Community Clinic, the Louisville Sustainability Council, and West End School, amongst many others. And I want to amplify one line in your agenda for Louisville's future document so that it's heard in every home, every office, school, and house of worship in our city. Recognizing that we must have frank discussions about our city's past, present, and future, but also must act. The Rotary declares, quote, simply talking about these issues will not get the job done, unquote. We have the potential in 2021 to make historic progress, to send a loud message to America that Louisville is a city of compassion, community, innovation, and resilience. This is the year to take action. On Monday, we'll celebrate Dr. King's birthday. What would he say about this moment? I believe he'd tell us to seize this historic opportunity with what he once described as the fierce urgency of now. Let's follow his example so that in 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years, people will look back at this moment in our history and say that if 2020 was a low point, 2021 was a turning point. A turning point where we looked at the racism both in our history and our lives today, and together we said, enough. When we looked into the face of hatred and division, masquerading as patriotism, and together said, enough. We are better than this. We have the potential to overcome pain and loss and fear and ignorance and tragedy. Those are the steps we must take. Let's commit ourselves to our families, neighbors, our city, and our future, so that the lesson our children and grandchildren learn about this period is about more than the tragedies we experience, but the transformation we created in response together. Thank you all, and may God bless the people of Louisville.
Thank you, Mayor, for an informative and inspiring address. We're all in this together, and we are behind you and look forward to a great year with you being our leader, moving us forward. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Julie.
Now we have a few questions if you've got a little time, and our speakers committee, I'll just call on the various members to ask the questions. The first one is Alice Bridges, a past president of the Rotary Club. Alice, if you'd please take over here.
Thank you, President Julie, and thank you, Mayor, for being with us today and speaking to the big issues that are facing our city. I wanted to ask you to address some fundamental problems that we face, specifically lack of traffic enforcement, poorly maintained metro parks, and widespread graffiti, litter, panhandling. All of these things contribute to a sense of a city in decline. What are you doing to improve resources to support these basic city services in the next budget year?
Yeah, thanks, Alice. And thanks again to the Rotary for having me. You know, all these issues are a result of the pandemic. What's happened to us is a good portion of our workforce has been infected. Now that they're coming back, you'll see more of stand-up crews taking place there. Relative to downtown, we announced it just in this speech, the downtown revitalization plan that's going to be focusing on clean, green, and safe, extra police patrols. Our workforce in our police department is down, and it's happened in police forces all over the community as well. And so you're seeing some difficulty with traffic enforcement, and pedestrian deaths are up, and fatalities, vehicle fatalities are up as well. So we're all aware of those issues and working through them, sometimes with extra funding. Some of the CARES dollars have helped us as well. But the key to all this is getting through the pandemic so people are healthy, so workforce can be back to a full complement. Our downtown can be full of people again, which will help with tourism and other activities. So you'll start to see more focus on getting these conditions back into the shape that they need to be now that our workforce is back, and we've got some additional funds dedicated to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Next is Curt Jacobs.
Hey, Mayor. How you doing? What is being done to help small businesses damaged or even closed due to the social unrest and or the pandemic?
Yeah, so hopefully you all have seen, we've had about $30 million of grants so far to small businesses. I'm a business guy, and it just pains all of us to see what's taken place. The forecast by many people is up to 1/3 of small businesses in America will be closed by the end of this pandemic. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that's not going to happen. So about $30 million in grants so far. This last round of CARE stimulus from the federal government has more assistance to small businesses. I fully anticipate President-elect Biden will be coming back with another plan of stimulus, but then also a broader infrastructure plan to get people back to work. So the key right now is just to hold on until we get there. So we will continue to put out the monies that we receive as quickly as we can from the federal government, as well as the monies that are coming from our philanthropic community. The One Louisville COVID-19 Relief Fund was $11 million that went out as well. So it's kind of an all-in strategy to get through this pandemic, which really obviously has been, for this past year, just totally upended how we all live.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor, I wanted to also follow up on that and see, do you envision some new incentives aimed at attracting people to come back downtown to work and live, and also new investments in downtown?
There's going to be an effort put together by Louisville Tourism and GLI and Louisville Downtown Partnership to showcase the assets of downtown. But downtown was on a real renaissance, as I mentioned before the pandemic. It's going to be after the pandemic as well. We just have too many assets with our hotels, our convention center, the restaurants, kind of the new soccer stadium district, all this. I know people are impatient, but we've got to get the health of the community back right now. So I feel confident that once that happens, people will be coming back. It's just going to take some time, and we'll have the adequate resources dedicated to making sure downtown is ready. But there's just no question the pandemic has upended the way we live right now.
Thank you, Mayor. Next, welcome to the stage, Walter Woods.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Fischer, in your role as President of the United States Conference of Mayors, how is your agenda evolving given the disruptions of the pandemic and the civil unrest of 2020 and the recent events of last Wednesday?
Yeah, well, you can imagine, Walter, and you know this, you got to pivot constantly depending on reality. So you got to have a good, strong plan, and then you got to pivot to what takes place. So fortunately, the strong plan that we had and what's taking place are pretty complementary with each other. So one, it's getting us through the pandemic, not to be a broken record, but that is at the core of all of these issues, getting our economy going, making sure people are safe, their families are safe, focusing on the lower income aspects of our community and the country, whether it's here or any of our Conference of Mayors activities. So focusing on racial justice and economic recovery, and then also focusing on extremism, this domestic terrorism, the radicalization that we saw most recently last Wednesday in Washington, D.C., has all cities on high alert right now. So that portion with reimagining public safety go hand in hand. Much of that reimagining public safety started because of the racial justice marches that we saw throughout our country this past summer. But it goes hand in glove with having to reimagine everything right now with this rise in radicalization that we're seeing also. So the mayors are pivoting through all of these different areas to make sure that we're really responsive to the immediate needs of our country, which are obviously right now. So it's about justice, it's about economic opportunity, and it's about unifying our cities and our country.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mayor Fischer, and to your team and all the guests that are with us today. We're just so unified together in knowing that we believe in Louisville, and we want to work side by side with each of you to make our city as strong as ever before. And
Julie, I just want to say too, when I talk about pivoting, I want to really compliment the Rotary. You guys, with your statements about racial equity, the increased investment and attention that you're putting into this, and intentionality is a role model for everybody in our city. I'm proud of the way our city has stepped up. Many cities are kind of in denial right now, like nothing happened in the past year. You know, we're in the reality business. So I appreciate the way that y'all have kind of embraced the need for us to do much, much better as an organization. Look, the Rotary has traditionally been a predominantly white male organization. The way that you all are diversifying both gender, race, leaning into equity is just a great leadership model for the rest of the city and the rest of the country. So I wanted to say good job to you guys.
oh, thank you so very much. That means the world to all of us. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you.
Next week's pre-meeting will feature